We'll begin our exploration of biology with Chapter 1 of our textbook. In this chapter, we'll examine some of the general principles of biology and the foundations of science in general. And it'll serve as a good foundation for the information presented in the rest of the text. However, for the rest of the semester, we will not step outside the cell. Primarily, we'll be looking at the cellular mechanisms and processes that allow biological systems to run. Biology is a science that unifies much of the natural science. It's a point of convergence for the information and tools from many other disciplines. Biological systems are the most complex chemical systems on Earth, and their many functions are both determined and constrained by the principles of chemistry and physics. That is, biology is based on chemistry and physics. So we'll spend a substantial amount of time this semester examining the chemical systems that support biology. The intricate chemical workings of cells are based on everything we've learned from our study of chemistry. And every level of biological organization is governed by the nature of energy transactions, which we learn from the study of thermodynamics. That is, the complexity of living systems is made possible by the constant source of energy that we call the sun. Science is becoming more and more and more of an interdisciplinary science. It combines many, many fields. We look now into genomics and nanotechnologies, as well as ecology, biotechnology, and modeling. There are 7 characteristics that are common to all living things. We know inherently that a car is not alive and a dog is alive, but what are the characteristics that allow us to perceive living from non-living? The idea that if it moves could tell us that it's alive, but the car also moves and we know that it's not alive. So these 7 characteristics are shared by all living systems. All living systems are composed of cells. They consist of one or more cells. These cells carry out the basic activities of living. Each cell is bound by a membrane and it's separated from its surroundings. The second characteristic is that all living things have ordered complexity. They are both complex as well as highly ordered. Your body is composed of many different kinds of cells, for example. Each of those cells contains many complex molecular structures. Many non-living things may also be complex, but they don't have the same degree of ordered complexity that we see in living systems. Living things also respond to their environment. That is, they have sensitivity. Plants grow towards sources of light just as our eyes dilate when light is absent and constrict when light is very present. All living things can grow, develop, and reproduce. And in doing this, they pass hereditary material onto their offspring, and this hereditary material determines that the offspring will be of the same species. All living things obtain and use energy. That is, they utilize energy that's originally produced by the sun. All organisms take in energy and use it to perform many kinds of different work. For example, the muscles in our body contract as a result of energy that we obtain from all the food that we eat. Living organisms are able to maintain internal balance. That is, homeostasis. Homeostasis is a very important concept. Homeostasis allows organisms to maintain relatively constant internal conditions despite the variety of external conditions that they may be exposed to. For example, we maintain our body temperature around 98.6 degrees. We don't move very far outside of that. This is because we have many homeostatic mechanisms in place to help us maintain this optimal body temperature. Finally, All living things allow for evolutionary adaptation. All organisms interact with other organisms and the non-living environment around them, and these interactions influence an individual's survival. As a consequence, organisms evolve adaptations to their particular environment. That is, the organism that is best suited for the environment probably has a better chance of reproducing in that environment and having successful offspring. Now, biological systems are hierarchical in organization. That is, one level builds on the level below it. So when we look at the cellular level of organization in biology, we'll see things like atoms, molecules, organelles, and cells. The atoms come together to form molecules, and then the molecules come together to form macromolecules. For example, here a nucleotide molecule is coming together with many other nucleotide molecules to form the macromolecule DNA. Many macromolecules then come together to form organelles. These intricate organelles form all the structures inside the cells, but each cell depends on many organelles for a complete cell entity. So organelles then come together to form cells, and cells are the basic unit of all life. They're enclosed in a membrane and contain a multitude of different organelles inside that we'll examine in the future of this semester. When we look at the organismal level of organization, we'll see tissues, organs, and organ systems. For example, a tissue might be nervous tissue. The nervous tissue comes together in order to form an organ, such as the brain. And the brain comes together with many other components of the nervous system, such as nerves, to form an entire organ system, or the nervous system in this case. And many organ systems then come together to form the organism itself. So the nervous system, along with the digestive system and the cardiovascular system, so on and so forth, come together to form this entire duck. Now we look at the population level. The population level is above the organismal level. It's when we see many different organisms coming together to form a population. A population is a group of organisms of the same species that live in the same place. So a group of organisms from the same species that live in the same place. So we could have two individuals of the same species that live on opposite sides of our continent. They could not be considered a population. They would be two separate populations of the same species. When we have many different populations coming together of different organisms, we call this a community. So a community consists of all the populations of different species living together in one place. Take a moment to differentiate between population and community. Once we step up to the ecosystem level, we're at the highest tier of biological organization. A biological community and the physical habitat within which it lives together constitute an ecological system or an ecosystem. Now, we can step up one level slightly higher than the ecosystem. That is the biosphere. The biosphere is the entire planet, and it can be thought of as a very large ecosystem. Now, as we move up through each level of organization in biological systems, we see that novel properties emerge that were not evident before we looked at the next level up. For example, you could not tell possibly the function of a particular organelle just by looking at one of the macromolecules within it. Just as you could not possibly guess at the function of the brain just by looking at an individual neuron. We call these emergent properties. That is, properties that emerge as we move up through the levels. Properties that cannot be deduced just by looking at the parts themselves. It would be similar to looking at the transmission of a car and trying to establish what a car actually did. We can't see what the transmission's possibilities are within a car until we look at it in the whole system. Life is an emergent property. So as we move through content this semester, periodically we'll have color card quizzes. In the color card quiz, what you want to do is read and listen to the question, and then decide which color has the correct answer. Write down that color and proceed to the next card, and so on and so forth. Then you'll have a list of colors. At the end of the card quiz, there'll be a slide that displays which color was the correct answer. If you're missing one of the answers, you'll want to go back through the preceding material and make sure that you understand, or post on the discussion board to ask a question. So on this color card quiz, the question is, the ability to respond to a stimulus is an example of: red is sensitivity, yellow, homeostasis, blue, ordered complexity, or green, evolutionary adaptation. Write down the color you think is correct. We'll move on. The next question. All organisms and the physical environments on Earth constitute the: red, community, yellow, ecosystem, blue, genome, and green, biosphere. Which do you think is correct? Write it down. A bird on a cold night shivers to maintain its body temperature. What property of life does this example represent? Red, sensitivity, yellow, homeostasis, blue, order of complexity, or green, evolutionary adaptation. Which color do you think is correct? Write it down. And here are your answers to the color card quizzes. The first one was red, the next one was blue, the next green, and the following yellow. If you have all of those correct, you're ready to proceed on to the next lecture or module. Otherwise, go back and review. See where you're missing some information.